Welcome to the Dynamic Design series of podcasts from Foodservice Consultants Society International, FCSI. My name is Michael Jones. I'm the editorial director of FCSI's quarterly magazine, Foodservice Consultant. This is the second podcast in our Dynamic Design series, brought to you with support from our good friends at Atlas Metal. Please check out their website at atlasfoodserve.com. Each podcast interview features a leading FCSI the Americas professional member consultant discussing the key factors affecting the future of food service design. Across the series, we're looking at the 4 key P's that are required when putting together a design-led food service project: planning, partnerships, presentation, and people. Today, we're focusing on partnerships and how vital it is to have solid working relationships with key stakeholders when working on a design-led food service project from a consultancy perspective, and why collaborative working and effective communication between consultants, architects, operators and other major stakeholders in a food service project will always produce the best results. We're recording this particular episode at the Godfrey Hotel in Chicago during the week of the National Restaurant Association show. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Kristin Sedej FCSI of S2O Consultants Inc., who are based in the greater Chicago area. Kristin, welcome. Just please tell us a bit about your business and the areas of the food service and hospitality sector that you specialise in.
We mainly focus on design, and we have a strong foothold in the sports market, both professional and collegiate, but I have a background in management and hospitality degree, so we do a lot of different types of projects. I'm able to bring an operational perspective to it. I would say there's only 2 market segments that we don't cover, and that would be healthcare and corrections.
Tell me about the initial stages of a design-led project. So who are the most important people that you have to speak with in order to get the information you need prior to commencing the design of a commercial kitchen or front of house space?
We get a lot of masters, because there's a lot of, the client defines himself differently. First and foremost, you have to have an operator who's going to operate the space, right? Ironically enough, sometimes we don't have that player in the beginning. Ideally, though, you'd have the operator who's going to run it, so we understand. Really, food service is 3 things. What are you serving, 2, how many, and what period of time? And if you can answer that trifecta and get that, then it can start to lend itself to, the pieces of the puzzle, what the design is. However, you have an architect whose job is to bring this project in on time and on budget, and we are a small piece typically of a larger program. You have an owner who's concerned with the profitability of it typically, and the operator and the owner could be 2 different people. For example, in a sports project, the person who's writing the check is very far removed from the contract food service operator that's going to actually work in the space.
Sure.
And then you have to be cognizant of the infrastructure, because not only do we have to have it make sense from a food service layout production standpoint, you've got to build this and all the implications. There's electrical, mechanical, HVAC, refrigeration, structural. So all of those things need to be kept in mind, so that as we're going back to that, how do we get our project in on time, on budget, and make it work? Have we spent the client's money wisely by knowing what the systems are and energy efficient and existing conditions?
So there's so many moving parts that you have to keep on, and as you said, so many masters, so many stakeholders that are involved in a project. Do you always have to have close contact with the operator or the architect, especially during the course of a typical project, or is it just case by case?
It depends on the size of the project. Most times I would say we are hired by the architect as a part of their team. We are that bridge between operation and building. Yeah. We understand both of those worlds. An architect doesn't understand the flow of food service and why things need to be where they were. And an operator doesn't have any idea why their walk-in has a ramp to it and it's not flush, because they don't understand the structural implications. So we start in the beginning to get the pieces of the puzzle and lay it out so it works. And then once then we switch hats, and then we become part of the construction industry. Sure. Most times there's an architect on board, and we're a piece of the puzzle.
So you guys have to be very, I would say, quite agile in terms of how and flexible with how you work those relationships when you have to be more present, or when you have to have certain meetings with certain stakeholders.
Especially when you may have conflicting goals, even though they're on the same team. We talk about form versus function a lot. An architect may be concerned with how it looks. That's important, but it has to work too. And so how do you take all the knowledge you have as to why their concept that they've just shown the client that looks beautiful doesn't work, and they'll lose money, or they'll have unhappy clients. There's a fine balance between better and new and greater and tried and true, because it works. And how do you blend that, and how do you have those conversations? So, and when you see a train on the tracks, The longer I've done this, the more confident you become in letting people know early on, say that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
You have to manage your clients
Yeah.
to do well by them. There's nothing better than having done this for a while and you walk into a project and you got an intro going, oh, we love to work with S2O. We work with them on this project, and those relationships, then it starts to become easy. And I go, I think we should do this, and they go, fine. And when you can start to get to that point,
Yeah.
then the efficiencies and the fun starts to begin, because you really create that teamwork, and that's when projects start to sing and you get somewhere where you need to be.
Why is it important to establish strong or regular lines of communication throughout a project? Why does that matter?
Well, everybody typically has an idea in their head what this project's going to look like at the end. And invariably, they're never the same, because no one comes into it with the same amount of knowledge, and everyone has a different goal for what successful means, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be able to talk to them to pull out of their head what they're expecting, because most people can't read plans. You walk through them, you understand it. So the goal is, at the end of the day, it could be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road from when you started this, and it's built and it opens. Does it meet the expectations of what everybody thought ahead of time? And if it does, then it's a successful project, because you know what to expect. It's a gamble of how much can you pull out, create their world. Many times, like if I'm doing school projects, I'll go in and before I even start, can I just watch what you do? Can I learn who you are?
Yeah.
Because if I don't know where you're coming from and where you're starting, how do I help fix you?
And how helpful is that you then to get under the skin of a particular client or operator to truly understand their business before you start?
Absolutely huge. I don't even start designing actually till we do what we call a design narrative, where we sit and we have conversations, we talk about goals and limitations, and we get as much detail as we can, and that kind of becomes our Bible, and I actually put it in narrative format and send it out for everyone to read, because we want this to be a building block, and we want transparency for each level all the way along. If the communication stands, again, at the end of the day, people walk in and they're excited about what they see versus, well, how did this happen? There's a lot of hands in the pot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Looking at a project from, say, inception to completion, how much face time do you typically try and get with operators or architects throughout that whole process? Can you rely on things like Skype for long-distance projects, or do you always try and push for face-to-face visits, site visits, that kind of thing?
Yeah, essentially at the end of the day, a consultant is time management, right? I mean, we're selling intellectual property, and how efficient can we do that?
Yeah.
So anytime I can get something effective that takes less time, WebEx, go to. If it's an hour meeting, why would I take 2 days? However, the FaceTime is important, I think, early on for all those things I talked about before, to get to know each other, to start developing that relationship, so where that trust is when you're on the phone, you know who you're talking to. So, and then at the end, you need to be back, sometimes in the field, but even on large professional sports projects, or the one that we had, in LAFC, I was out there 3 times in 4 years, that was it.
Yeah.
So, a lot can be done with the WebEx and technology these days.
What would you say is the most valuable lesson that you've learned about the importance of maintaining good communication on a design-led project?
Knowing when you walk in that you want them to say, wow, this is what I expected, not how did this happen? And that only happens because you've had the questions, how did this happen?
Yeah. And
you think that you've communicated, but you haven't. And there's nothing like the pit in your stomach when you realize that you may not have met someone's expectations. It could be small, it could be larger.
Why is it important for food service consultants to have a good relationship with equipment manufacturers, to keep abreast with new products on the market, to keep that line of communication open as well?
Boy, the food service equipment industry is a moving target. If you think exponentially of the number of pieces of equipment I'm supposed to understand and know. Because if I'm going to give the client such as the best bang for the buck, right? That's what I'm doing. You want to accomplish this, let me come up with great ways to do that. And obviously the food service equipment is a huge part of that. Knowing what to use, when, who supports it, who backs it. I recommend it. I look at a specification as a recommendation. You're using my name. I'm telling you that we should put this on your project.
Yeah.
So that communication goes all the way from the beginning, from number one, to let us know what's out there and that it's even applicable, or even a possibility, to all the technical questions. So when we put that building hat on, we know what it takes in order to make it fit. And then 3, if something does go wrong, I've got a lunch lady in some small town in Illinois, right? She has no relationship, but that oven that she's struggling with, I can pick up the phone due to FCSI and some of the relationships that I've had and say, hey, you need to go take care of such and such. And so now, because of my relationship with her and then my relationship with the factories, here's some, K through 12 food service operator that has connectivity to maybe a VP, one of the best companies in the world.
You mentioned FCSI there, and in terms of maintaining those relationships, say with equipment manufacturers, or making new relationships. How can FCSI help in that regard?
Being involved in the conference planning committees, that's kind of how I got my foot in the door and becoming active. I think we're really getting it that you need to create an environment that people want to come to. I always laugh. We were at the last FCSI event in NAFM, and one of the manufacturers walked up to me and he goes, "How do I get more face time?" I go, "Make friends."
Yeah.
If you're friends, they're going to treat you better.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. They're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. They're going to probably give you more honest answer. So create environments where we get together, where those relationships can be forged, so that we can then go on. Not just with other members. I mean, there are times that I've called other members. I'm like, I'm over my head on this one, and I know you're an expert at this. Can you help me with this? Absolutely. Or there's been times, hey, can you take this piece? Or we've got, we're busy right now. Here's a really good project. Would you like this? We'll pass projects off to each other.
That's wonderful. Maybe maintaining that thread with FCSI. Why is it important to keep standards in the profession as high as those that you maintain yourself? And how can FCSI help in that regard?
What we do is subjective. We don't sell equipment, so therefore you are paying for intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
And so all you have to go on is, hey, I'm great, right? Or your past work,
yeah,
right?
Your body of work.
It's very difficult once you start a project for it to switch out.
Yeah.
So if someone hires a non-competent person with their design, they're not going to know it till the end, and it's too late. I think it differentiates us. I am not beholden to any manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go in to do a project, I feel I'm a client advocate. That's my job.
Yeah.
I don't make any more money whether I tell them to buy the $10,000 refrigerator or the $1,000 refrigerator, or let me come in and see how much existing stuff that we can use. Let's reuse this. Let's get the best job for you.
Yeah.
So that impartiality, I think, differentiates us from a dealer who they will tell you, I have free design, and that is our biggest competitor. And you walk into something like, just because you have the right stuff there doesn't mean that it's going to work. It could work, but if you think about McDonald's and how long they spend on the ergonomics of just a drive-through, right, and where you position somebody, and how many steps and how many hands, probably not possible to do that kind of for every concession stand in a 70,000 NFL seat stadium. However, we also know that you probably don't want the ice maker next to the 3-compartment sink, right? Or that there's a connectivity with this, or there's a reason aisle space should be what it is, and the longer you do it, the better you get at it. So some of that impartiality, I think, breeds itself to success for the end user.
Many thanks for listening to the second episode in our Dynamic Design series of podcasts from FCSI and Atlas Metal. This podcast has been made possible by the good people at Atlas Metal, a trusted serving equipment partner with a hands-on approach to doing business. See how they're making metal personal at atlasfoodserve.com. Meanwhile, keep your eye on the FCSI website, fcsi.org, for more episodes in the series.